This is Kate Baconsale. You're listening to Baconsale.
Teenager Debbie discovers on her 16th birthday that she has ancient magical powers. With the guidance of an enigmatic mentor, Zack, and the support of her loyal friends Joel and Kent, she must face an ancient evil threatening her town. Filled with twists and turns like hidden prophecies, quirky training montages, and an epic final battle, Debbie learns to embrace her destiny and save her community from darkness until she forgets everything for the sequel. Coming this summer, Baconsale, Shadowfall.
Ooh, Shadowfall.
Debbie's the chosen one.
Of course.
Obviously.
So I said, hey, ChatGPT, give me the most generic YA novel adaptation.
It just became a bestseller. Look at that.
And everybody loves it.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
Green light. But welcome to Baconsale. I'm Joel.
I'm Kent.
And I'm Zack.
We'd like to thank you for listening to our last episode, our Parents Guide Game 3, otherwise known as Parents Guide Game Plus.
Yes, and there were a couple of people playing along. Okay,
yes, which we love.
There are people who are doing better than us.
Yes.
Sure. For example, Ryan said that he got Anchorman on the first clue.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Todd Callan said, "Don't feel bad, Joel." He picked up on your clues for Oppenheimer.
Feel
and
bad.
Yep.
Emperor's New Groove. Andrea said, since I rarely beat the Baconsale boys in anything, I have to brag whenever I do. Since I was faster than you with Forrest Gump, The Parent Trap, Clue, School of Rock, and Grease.
Take
That's
it
like
easy.
All after the first clue.
I think she won.
Apparently, everybody's better than us. We need to have a
We knew that going into this
listener
podcast.
parents guide live.
Sure.
And then finally, Spencer Larson said, "Great show, but I think you need a parents guide for the parents guide for the parents guide game." Joel, I'm looking at you.
Yeah.
Joel,
I
you
did.
said some stuff.
I gave disclaimers, and everything I said was medical terms.
Sure.
So, yeah.
We didn't get one because you made it sound dirty
Yeah.
for a kid show.
I did not. The Parents Guide did.
You chose
But it's like I said, Baconsale is family friendly. It always will be. But that's episode where I'm like, well, that depends on where your age of your family is. Like older family, sure. Younger family, maybe
now
not.
that you have older kids, you're getting away with PG-13. Is that what we're
No.
saying? Oh, I like this, Joel.
Like, are we a 90s family movie? Like,
Yeah.
there's a little bit like what are we, 80s PG?
But no, never.
No.
Stop doing the bunny dance. Put your shirt on.
Remember that lone F word in Big? That was fun. Go on, Joel.
Anyway. Oh, yeah.
It's so weird.
In a PG movie.
Yeah, it's so bizarre.
Anyway. Well, but that's not what we're talking about today.
Not at all.
What are we talking about today, Zach?
We're talking about movie adaptations of young adult novels.
Yes, we are. In fact, we've done an episode similar to this before, back on episode 245. Take a look. It was a book. That was back in March of 2020. Did that
How'd you
true?
remember that? Wow, that's crazy.
amazing. It's off the top of my head.
Off the
top of my head. But then we decided, us here,
Oh, sure.
decided to
Give
hone
us
in
the
on
credit?
that and do kind of a spiritual sequel and focus in on YA fiction.
No, listen, we can't take the credit for that. Where does the credit go?
Goes to our guest,
Hey, Debbie, how's it going?
Debbie
It's going
Foster.
great.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Welcome back to the cave.
Happy to be here.
Now, Debbie has been with us before on Baconsale episode 405, canceled too soon.
How'd you
back
know
in June
that?
2020. Top of my head.
Savant.
But
Patreon.com/Baconsale. You'll get that
there's a
reference.
whole
Sorry.
there's a whole joke behind that. But you were with us before talking about shows that were canceled too soon, and you came back wanting to talk about YA fiction, young adult fiction novels and their adaptations. Why is that? Where do you stand on young adult fiction adaptations?
Actually, we see a lot of them. We read a lot in our family, and we see a lot of movies. So it just seemed a natural topic to talk about. My kids and I talk about this type of stuff all the time. So
Nice. And so you have read a lot, I presume?
yes.
And you do enjoy that. Would you say, and I'm just throwing this out there as kind of a question for all of you, but particularly Debbie, do you think the majority, what percentage of young adult adaptations would you say are good adaptations? Like well done film adaptations
It's a
of
mean
a book?
question.
I'm going to go with 10 to 20%.
That low.
But you still like the
That
genre.
feels good.
Still like the genre.
Is it more you just have more faith and you trust the author rather than a director making a bad adaptation? Right, because it's been about 15 years since this has been a phase, I
Right.
would say.
Mm-hmm.
15
Think so?
years? Maybe 10 years? Because remember, this hit big for about a decade there. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, we can't really finish the Divergent series because no one cares anymore. It's like, what?
No one cared about the Divergent series.
Well, that's... oh, that feels
We'll get
mean.
there. We'll get there.
Okay,
oh,
good.
will we?
Yeah.
But I do feel like we're not seeing these anymore. I don't know if the superhero genre just kind of took over and now that's kind of falling apart. But like, maybe this will come up. Will we see a resurgence of this?
I think there will always be some of those novels that will make those adaptations.
Okay.
And that people are wanting, especially that age group 18 to 25, or want to see the books they read on screen.
Yeah.
So I think it will continue. It just won't be like we saw it peaked back in what, 2010-ish?
Mid 2010s, I think, around there.
Yeah, Hollywood being Hollywood, do you think we'll just see reboots and remakes of the ones that were popular right at the beginning of this?
No, although I have my thoughts about the remake of the Harry Potter
series.
Yeah.
Not animated, stupid.
But do you guys agree about 10 to 20% is good?
That feels good to generous. I think that the thing is, there's a lot of them. And so there's bound to be everything, right? There's bound to be some successes. There's bound to be some massive failures. And I think the genre in general is riddled with mediocrity. I think there's a lot of just like, I guess it was fine.
It's a tricky minefield too, because when they take a YA adaptation, they'll put it out there for people who already love the book, and almost always people will say, not as good as the book.
I struggle with the novels themselves because I think generally the first book has a great concept, and then there's generally maybe a trilogy, so the next two books aren't as good. They're kind of just burn off on steam. And I'm like, okay, well, don't make a series of movies on this. And sometimes you never even saw one movie past or one book get adapted.
And that is kind of the sad thing, is when they made a movie and then it never gets a follow-up. And if there's a series of books and it only gets one movie, that always makes me a little sad inside, because they botched it so bad that first time that they're like, they're never going to touch that again.
More like Artemis Fowl, am I right?
Call back. So we have a series of categories we're going to be going through today, and we're going to be giving answers that are specifically geared towards young adult adaptations.
Yeah.
So in the last one, with the one with Drew, we did kind of a broad thing. There were some young adult adaptation answers in there, but now we're kind of honing in on that. So shall we begin?
Let's do it.
Our first category is an underrated adaptation. Joel, please start.
So for my pick for young adult adaptation that is underrated, I picked a child's author, someone who generally writes child books, but then they wrote one that involved a lot more complex plot, complex characters, a little more depth, a little more darkness even. And that's why I picked Holes by Louis Sachar. Louis Sachar. Okay, I'm either going to say Louis Satcher or Louis Sachar. You tell me which one's wrong.
Got to go.
I don't want to poke holes in your Holes choice. Underrated? I don't think anyone walks by and sees Holes at Target these days,
I'll
whether
tell
it's
you
the
why.
book or movie, and goes, I don't like that.
No. And I think...
Oh, you like Holes?
There is definitely... it is a cult classic.
to dig 'em.
It was a mediocre success at the box office. And the book did well. But the reason I say it's underrated, because I think a lot of people dismiss it as a child's movie. It is not young adult fiction. It is a child's movie, a child's book.
Oh, okay. I get that.
And I think that's giving it a disservice. Now, if you don't know what it is, so the book came out in 1998. And the synopsis: a wrongfully convicted boy is sent to a brutal desert detention camp where he joins the job of digging holes for some mysterious reason. And the movie came
build
out,
character, and that's it.
Yeah. And then the movie came out in 2003, and it had Sigourney Weaver, Jon Voight, Patricia Arquette, Shia LaBeouf, of course.
Actual cannibal.
And then...
You left out Tim Blake Nelson.
I did. I'm sorry. Tim Blake Nelson as well. But I love this movie, and I do feel like even the movie... Like, it's one of those cult classics that those that love it, but I don't feel like people ever really talk about Holes in that regard.
Okay,
that it's
I
like,
agree.
oh, it's one of the great YA adaptations, and it's like, it is. Because the book is so much fun to read. And like I said, Louis Sachar generally wrote children's books, and he's won a bunch of children's awards. But this is one where it was more about teens and teen angst and mystery. And the movie, same thing. I feel like there's some stuff in there you don't normally see in children's movies. So I put it as underrated simply because I feel like people kind of downplay it when it's a darn good movie and a darn good book.
Do you know how Aragorn broke his toe when he kicked the helmet? You know how that's a thing.
I thought it was
My
set up for a
version
joke
of
there.
that is when Sam is giving away his magic hair tonic potion, and he's like, "What about you? Like, put this on your head." He's like, "My head." That's the author.
That's the author.
That's the author.
Okay.
In that flashback scene.
You know what the funny thing is, though, Zach?
What?
Is that Sam was actually on set when Aragorn kicked the helmet. You know what he said? I can fix that.
I walked right into that.
No.
Joel,
stop it.
that's a good choice. I dig it. No, really, I'm so excited to support your point, Joel. I'm really excited to read that book with my stepson and watch the movie. I read that when I think I was in 6th grade, and just kind of like, it was a book that I found. I thought the cover looked cool.
Yeah.
It had one of those like award
Newbery Award kind of thing,
sticker
yeah.
things on it.
Yeah.
I was like, sure, why not? I absolutely loved the book. Loved the movie. Although I always complained that Shia LaBeouf wasn't fat enough to play Stanley.
Yeah, they were gonna.
Because they make a whole thing of it how he's fat.
and he loses a lot of weight while he's at the
Right.
camp. And they went, we probably can't do that realistically in a live action
Yeah.
movie. Although maybe they should now.
They should have just
Christian
cast
Bale
Christian
would have
Bale.
done it. Exactly. Thank you. So I haven't read
They
the
were actually
book.
going to do Frankie Muniz was going to be the main character.
okay.
Oh, he would have been good
They
too.
couldn't
So,
get up his
so the
contract.
book is good. Is it
Yeah.
close to the book?
Yes.
The adaptation?
Yeah, it's actually
The
surprisingly
adaptation
close.
is very
Okay.
close to the book. So much so that I've said this before on Baconsale. When I was reading it as a child, I envisioned Sigourney Weaver as the warden.
Okay.
Really?
Like that was actually in my mind. Like so when she was cast, I'm like, this movie's perfect. Sans one weird detail about a character's weight.
Yeah.
So great choice. But again, to support your point, my stepson is about 9.5, and I'm waiting a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Right. I think that is probably going to be okay, and he's a smart kid, but I just want to push it till he's closer to a teenager and maybe can feel the angst part of it.
And you don't want to give your child an irrational fear of bearded lizards.
Or digging.
Yeah,
I
or
might need his help in
Get
the
him
yard.
get it for yard work. Right.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Joel. I do dig the choice. Kent,
Well,
what do you
How
got?
am I going to be that? There's no way I'm going to be holes. I chose warm bodies. Oh, hey.
I haven't
Okay,
read that
thank
book.
you.
I haven't read that book, but the movie's entertaining.
Seriously, I didn't really even know it was YA book.
You didn't?
But I
Was
think
it a comic?
No, it
Graphic
was
novel?
a book.
It was a book.
Written by Isaac Marion,
was
released
under the
in
impression it was a
2010. The movie was released in 2013. And I think that's why I kind of chose it as underrated. Like, people like the movie. Joel, you and I saw this movie. We really like the movie, but I think it's forgotten as a YA adaptation and also a zombie movie.
Oh, I think it's totally forgotten.
Yeah.
This is the
But why?
zombie Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it's kind of
It came
down
tail
as.
end of the craze. I think is one of the reasons.
So 2013, that was...
I feel like we were on the downhill.
We'll see. So does that work for it? The fact that it's funny and it's like a Shakespeare story, or does it feel too YA to you?
Well, 2013.
Yeah, 2013.
Maybe it came out at the peak of the zombie, and so
Okay.
it was lost in the fold.
Yeah, because zombie stuff was a
Yeah,
little tedious at that point.
So, I don't know.
They
I
had
really like this
I
one,
It
though.
had two things going against it because the zombie craze had kind of been playing pretty high for a while, and
Right.
the YA adaptation had been playing for a while, so maybe that's why people didn't see it as much.
Okay.
It did okay at the box office, though, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It made $116 million on a $35 million budget.
Yeah.
but it really feels like it did come and go. Like it's
Yeah.
just gone.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about the
Because
movie
it's
in
one
years,
of those
but I
where
do
I'm
think
like,
of it.
oh, I could watch it this Halloween. And then I'm like, well, I forgot it existed.
No, that's not a Halloween movie.
Is it not?
No,
Yeah.
it
Is
came,
it a
it came out.
is
in
it a
February.
Valentine's
Did it
Day
not-
movie?
Did it not come out in February?
Sure.
I'm pretty sure it did. There's no way of knowing.
There's no way of knowing, but this one stars Nicholas Hoult and Teresa Palmer. And just as I was looking over like best YA lists, I didn't see it on anything.
February 1st, 2013.
Oh, it's a romance.
Hey, there
Some
could be
rom-com.
rom-com. There could be some rom-coms.
Zom rom-com.
Yeah.
Bop, bop.
Anyway, so Warm Bodies.
Great
is my
choice.
choice.
I like it.
Debbie?
Debbie.
Okay, so I'm going to get a lot of flack, but I think
Ooh, already. Here we
yeah,
go.
underrated. I'm going to say the Divergent series.
What?
Underrated.
The one
It's
so bad they
underrated.
couldn't finish it?
Exactly, because
Actually, that's probably the best choice.
the books themselves are pretty good. I will say they started in the trilogy 2011, 2012, 2013. And what I thought interesting about this is it's set in a future society, for those of you that don't know. And they are in factions, and they get to choose at 16 which faction. And then you find out that there's a lot of other political things behind it. Well, the novels got a lot of comparison, of course, because they are similar to Maze Runner, The Hunger Games, that type of thing. Very common. It did win the favorite book of 2011 from the Goodreads Reader's Choice. They are written by Veronica Roth. The movies themselves were, as you know, starred Shailene right?
Yeah, Shailene Woodley.
Yeah.
And Theo James. Kate Winslet played the main antagonist. Everything was actually going pretty well. The first installment, Divergent, grossed $288 million. Second, actually, in 2015, grossed $297 million. But the third installment dropped dramatically to $179 million.
Okay.
And the big part of the big reason, I think, and what I read is just like the other famous young adult films at the time, they decided to split the last book into two movies.
Yeah.
And that was their downfall.
Who did that? Was it Harry Potter that did that first?
Yeah, Harry Potter.
Because they had
Harry
a lot
Potter.
to cover.
So was it
Twilight.
greed that
It's a
really
good
shot him
idea.
in the foot?
I believe so.
Okay.
Between that and kind of the YA fatigue at the time, a lot of the same.
If they would have done both movies in one, they would have finished the series.
Right. For that sense, it's underrated because we never got to see the conclusion on the screen. So people who haven't read
Right.
the books don't know what happened.
As a completionist, I am sad I didn't get to see the end of the series.
Right.
Even though I was like, the movies are...
Yeah, the credits rolled, and he's like, well, I got to read a book now?
Yeah, no, I sure haven't.
right.
I'll listen to it someday.
Now, our next category is...
Wait, Zach, you don't read?
I don't... What?
What? You get
It's my
play?
turn to
Yeah.
play.
You're
do you
passing?
read books?
Holes was my pick. That's weird. Holes.
You're like same.
Same.
I don't read. It's
YA
going to be
novels.
odd. Every round he's going to be like, that was my pick too.
Yeah, crazy. I picked Holes and then Divergent.
But not Warm Bodies?
Not Warm Bodies.
Underrated.
I like it. No, each round I will award my favorite choice. Joel, you win.
Thank you.
All right. So no, I'm not officially playing. I'll opine. That's all.
Okay.
Next category. They shouldn't have made it into a movie. Kent, what do you say?
The Giver.
The Giver.
Yes.
The Giver
Is that the one where the sequel to The Hatchet where he goes down on the... Oh, that's River.
The River? Listen, Hatchet is a classic. Hatchet needs to be a movie.
And the sequel book is called
Have
The River.
they
And
not made a film adaptation of Hatchet?
I think this is probably a TV movie.
Probably.
But in
Very
all,
old one.
In all honesty, when I was young, I got these two mixed up. I
You
always
did.
looked at The Giver
They're
and thought
wildly different.
it was the sequel to Hatchet and the book in between Brian's Winter. And I know a lot about that
Brian's
franchise.
song?
I'm saving it for my Hatchet show. When I'm a patron, that's the show I want.
Okay, sure.
But tell me about The Giver.
This story is in a seemingly perfect community without war, pain, suffering, differences, or choices. A young boy is chosen to learn from an elderly man the true pain and pleasure of the real world. So this is a dystopian society meant to be utopian, but none of them ever are in YA. And that is a real theme. Did they create, or was it George Orwell maybe? The Giver is one of those that I think kind of, I'm not going to say predates. This was released in 1993, so I was a little bit younger reading this. And I just remember like being like, wow, that book changed everything for me. That was so
Cry in
deep.
the Wild. That was the film adaptation of
Hatchet.
Hatchet, released in
Thank
1990.
you.
I believe it was direct to DVD.
And speaking of authors that we can't...
They didn't exist back then, Joel.
Yeah, right.
That's what it says, DVD cover. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And speaking of authors that we can't pronounce, Lois Lowry? Louis L'Amour.
Yeah.
Lois Lowry is the author, and this won the 1994 Newbery Award and has sold more than 12 million copies. It is part of a 4-part series. I never read anything past the first. And I know that
I
it
only read
goes
the first one, too.
way more extensive, but the first is like a beautiful piece of simple art, I feel like.
It's a lot more, I don't want to say dramatic, but it feels more
Like
drama.
It feels like a French film almost.
Kind of.
The way you're reading it, you're like, oh, this is so deep and insightful.
Movie, not as much.
And then the movie was like, hey, instead of him being 12 when the story starts, because you get this role when you become a 12 and you grow with it. Instead of that, let's have him be a really handsome 17-year-old. And then let's give him
That'll
a
get
love
the ladies
story,
in.
right? And then let's put some action in there. And none of it really fit. I mean, the parts that fit were like Jeff Bridges. He wanted to make this movie for about 20 years. He wanted to work on it with his dad, and it just was stuck in development forever. He finally did get to play The Giver, and Meryl Streep played the villain in this one. She does a great job, but the story doesn't really incorporate her character much at all. The book doesn't. They made it a very short movie with way too much plot, which the book doesn't have. And so I think it never should have got it. It kind of did a little disservice to the book itself. So leave it alone.
I was going to say also in that book, the ending is ambiguous.
Yes.
For a reason.
Right.
And I don't feel like the movie allows that ambiguity.
I agree with
especially
that.
because everyone dies at the end of that one. Spoiler alert.
Thanks. Spoiler alert. Exactly.
I'm just going to say that for every book from now on, so you don't know which one is true. Debbie, what about you?
Okay, so I chose Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. So
I can't spell that.
the book is by Ransom Riggs, and it was published in 2011. He wanted to do a picture book. He had all these old photographs he collected, and his friend / publisher told him, you should make it into a story. So he did. He made these random weird pictures into a story, which was really kind of fun and part of the appeal to me anyway of that book. And then he had several after that, series of 6 books after that.
Okay.
But they made it into a movie, and it was directed by Tim Burton. It was released.
There's your problem.
It was released in 2016, and it starred Eva Green, Asa Butterfield, Chris O'Dowd, Allison
That's
Janney.
the one. I think that's the one where he's having an American accent.
And Samuel Jackson.
That's actually a really good cast.
Yeah, it received mixed to positive reviews, but
that's what we gave it.
It grossed 296 million worldwide against a production budget of 110. But part of the problem I have with this adaptation is that Burton focused on entertainment over the plot development.
Yeah.
And then he also made it essentially, he changed enough things that it made it kind of a standalone movie. So the people who love the series, they couldn't continue on because of how he did this first movie. So he kind of
he stole plot elements from the sequels. Then
he changed the book enough that he can't really go to the sequels the way
because everyone dies at the end.
No,
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. So I think, and part of the appeal is that those old photos, which are real, gave way to the story, and that's hard to translate onto the screen.
Okay.
The
I haven't
visuals
read the
were
book,
great.
but I'm actually intrigued now.
Did it seem like the perfect project for Burton? I mean, because it seemed like, I remember when we talked about this back when it came out, it's like, he seems like he's kind of forcing it a little bit.
Right.
Like, this is my style. This works for everyone, right?
Well, and the photographs are unusual.
Yeah.
And that's why they're peculiar children. So I think he was a natural choice. But because he was so focused on let's give entertainment, let's give the weirdness, it took away from the plot and the story, which has a lot of other
I don't remember a thing
themes.
about the plot.
It tells the story of a boy, Jacob, 16 years old, and his grandfather dies under mysterious circumstances and says something. And so he has to try to figure it out. And
It's a sled, by the way. Yeah. Thank you.
He had his grandfather told him all these fantastical stories, which he just thought were stories. But he finds out through the book that no, they were real, and he had this special gift, and he had a whole nother life before he became grandpa. And so he goes to find out what's going on. And what happens is these children are in what they call a time loop to protect them because they're peculiar. They have special things about them. So.
Okay.
All right.
Joel, what about you?
So you guys have both gone on with this book was too deep and then to turn into a movie. This book was too unique to be turned into a movie. Whereas mine is, this movie was a textbook. It should not have been made into a movie. Because I'm picking Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them by Newt Scamander, who's actually... Scamander, that's it. J.K. Rowling. It's really her. So the synopsis, the original version illustrated by the author herself purports to be Harry Potter's copy of the textbook. It includes several notes inside it, supposedly handwritten by Harry, Ron Weasley, and Hermione Granger, detailing their own experience with some of the beasts described and including inside jokes relating to the original series. It's a textbook with like 85 magical species giving their bios. It's like a book of Pokemon.
Wait,
basically.
so when people buy the book from like Barnes & Noble, not a sponsor, it's a textbook with little notes, like liner notes?
Not a current business. No.
Well,
they're still open.
they still, it's not Borders is gone.
But there's
Walden
different
books.
editions. Like this was, the first one was going to be Harry Potter's book that he got. Because this is a book that all first years got.
But people bought that book?
Yes. And it was just a textbook. It was
Just because it expanded the world building? Like, is that what we're saying?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was like a book of Pokemon. Like they say, here's a cool creature, and here's their bio, here's their powers.
We're also entering into the Pottermore era, where she's just like grasping at straws trying to get more content.
Yeah. So the book came out early 2000, and then the film came out in 2016, and it's a 128-page textbook that they are trying to turn into 5 movies. And J.K. Rowling
Peter
herself,
Jackson involved with this?
Yeah, J.K. Rowling came up with the idea herself. She was a screenwriter. She wanted to do this. She went to the Warner Brothers and gave them the plan of her movie. But really, I mean, I think it's kind of proving to be a failed experiment. And they shouldn't have made a movie in the first place. And they shouldn't try to do 5
I like
movies.
things about the first movie.
Because she's pretty.
Oh, no, I think it's kind of a charming
the ending
movie
where
in
everyone
some ways.
dies.
Colin
Yeah,
Farrell.
that one. I like Colin Farrell.
He's great.
And the Jacob character, I like him.
Colin Farrell / Johnny Depp.
No, just
you
Colin
ruined
Farrell.
it.
Ezra Miller.
Oh, you ruined it again.
What an interesting thing, right? You said it started out with a textbook, and then it's like, okay, we're going to adapt it into essentially like a Pokemon type thing, but then
A prequel
we're going to
series.
sneak in an entire prequel
About Dumbledore.
and his boyfriend, fighting. Like
Right.
what?
It's
Yeah.
just one of those things where I went, it didn't make sense in the first place when they were going to make it. They were just trying to cash in. You know, this was 2001, so this is around the time where even the first Harry Potter movie was about to come out. When did Harry Potter, the first movie, come out?
2001.
Is it?
Yeah.
So it's right around the time. I think she was just trying to be like, okay, the movie's coming out. I'm going to get another book out there.
Make a sequel series.
Do you think it actually would have been more successful if they just went, this is Dumbledore and Grindelwald. Like, this is their story. We're going to go through them. We're going to follow them.
The movies or the book?
The movie. If it was just Dumbledore and Grindelwald, a la Xavier and Magneto, like if they just had this, we're friends, but we also oppose each other in certain ways, and like that's the story.
Maybe prequels have their own issues too.
Sure,
Because
you know where you end.
Someone once said, I can't remember who it was, but it said something like, "No, audiences love nothing more than to be told everything they thought happened didn't really happen." And that always drives me nuts too when that happens. But yeah, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Okay.
Should have stayed as a
Good
textbook.
choice.
Never should have been made into a movie.
I like it. My choice is a Call of the Wild. What was it? What did you just call it?
Oh, yeah.
No, what was that book?
Hatchet?
Yeah, whatever Hatchet was.
Breath of the Wild.
No.
Because
Listen. Hey.
okay,
Listen.
Okay, A Cry in the Wild. Okay, the
Cry in the Wild.
movie adaptation.
A Cry in the Dark?
of Hatchet.
A Cry in the Dark is the Australian
Ding
one.
away my baby.
It's starring Jared Michael Rushton.
Yeah.
who
From
is
Honey, I
earlier
Shrunk the
reference. He's in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and he's in Big.
Yeah.
He's the kid who drops the F-bomb in Big.
Hey, Debbie, I'll just cut this out of the show.
Our next category is overrated. Debbie, what do you have?
All right, Joel, hang on.
I'm ready.
Harry Potter, the whole series.
No.
Hold on, guys. Give her a chance, guys. Guys, she's our guest. Just to explain to everybody, Debbie and I have our headphones on right now. Joel promptly took the headphones off. Zach followed, and Joel, you left for a minute.
It's nice outside.
So, Joel,
It's not hateful outside.
I will tell you, you're going to hate this, but my honorable mention was The Princess Bride. So,
Zach, my turn? My turn? Should I take my headphones off?
Joel, what do you have on this one?
Allow her. She's our guest. I'll
I was
allow her
going
to
to
make
say,
a point.
Takes.
I have to say, when I watched The Princess Bride the first time in the theater, I didn't like it because it was so condensed to the book.
Okay.
But over the years, I have come to love it. I understand its importance.
It's its own animal.
It is. But Harry Potter, I've chosen as the most overrated.
Why?
I will tell you why.
I mean, you better defend your case.
Go on.
So
Which one of the three members of Baconsale do you like the most, and why is it Kent?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a bad example.
Yeah. Go on, Debbie.
So, as we all know, Harry Potter is a series of 7 fantasy novels written by J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
They chronicle the lives of our young wizards and their friends, and essentially is the good versus bad.
Yeah.
And they were very positive. They were substantial financial success because they have estimated to be worth as much as $25 billion.
Oh, that's not too bad.
So-
Okay.
They also are considered one of the highest grossing book series and 4th highest grossing film series.
Right behind Star Wars, just before James Bond.
Yes. I think in that case, yes, they deserve a lot of accolades. They got kids to read again, which a lot of kids weren't reading. I appreciate all of that. They have a lot of awards, have a lot of it considered a significant impact on the film industry.
Stop right there. Don't say but.
However,
Yeah, well played. She reads.
says,
There was a semicolon in that sentence.
Zach reads.
let me define what I see as overrated is a person or thing that's considered to be better or more important than they really are. What I have an issue with is that this story draws heavy parallels to other literature that has already been written, like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars. I think the rabid fans have also made it overrated. They discuss how it saved their lives, and maybe it did, but they live in this fantasy world and nothing can touch them. And this idea...
I'm putting on my cloak of invisibility right now and just, I'm safe in here.
Listen, I'll back you up a little bit when it comes to adaptations.
Kent's going to back up her choice.
Yeah,
Zach.
listen.
Surprise.
There's one great movie in 8. The rest are good. The rest are really good. But there's one great movie.
3?
3.
Come on.
I stand by it. It's the best one.
That's
I think the movies are all... I saw them, I'm all, oh, that's really good. But I would never go, that was awesome.
But I would.
I love the books. I love the books.
But the third-
I
the
love
third
the
one
books
was really awesome.
3 through 7. I don't really like the first 2. But the movies themselves, I'm like, they're good.
I love the book, except for some of them.
No, the first 2 were children's books.
Well, and you just talked about it, that she does a lot. She's done a lot post those 7 books, and it seems like a lot of cash grab. And anytime
She definitely has
information,
watered down the brand.
right? And anytime it wanes as far as popularity or in the news, something else comes up. She changes a character's whole backstory, for example, to cater, or she has other flaws that it just doesn't. I don't feel it deserves the reverence it gets. So for that, the series,
Listen,
the movie series is overrated.
You nailed what overrated means.
Hey,
Usually
hey.
we're a little scared to say what we think.
Hey, Debbie, that's a good choice. You explained yourself very well, and I accept your answer because I do think it. I love it, and we're reading through it as a family, and we're having fun. But in a technical sense, yes, I think it is overrated because it's not the only thing, and I think that's maybe its problem. When people think about YA adaptations, they think about maybe 1 or 2 things, and as we've seen, there's a ton out there, and so it doesn't begin and end with Harry Potter. So I think it's overrated maybe in the same way as Star Wars is. Like, it doesn't begin and end with Star Wars. And much like Harry Potter, Star Wars, is an amalgamation of a bunch of things before it.
Derivative.
And Harry Potter is as well. So I accept your premise. I don't like it, but it's overrated.
It changed literary world. It changed cinematic world. Moving on.
I will say one last thing. My daughter.
It changed nothing cinematically.
It absolutely did. We just talked about it 2 seconds ago because they split their last movie to 2 movies. Everyone was like, we could do that.
It changed for the worse.
Here's what it did. It was like, hey, back in the day, we got new actors for every sequel, and they got progressively worse. This one, they kept the same cast, and that was awesome.
Yeah, that was good.
I don't think it moved the needle cinematically.
I think it did.
So I will one last thing. My daughter, Olivia, who's 14.
You just want to kick my shins now?
No, she reads this series every summer. This is one of the things she does. And she herself said, yeah, it's overrated, but I love it anyway. So.
Okay, see, I think it's fine to say. Yeah.
Joel, what is your overrated pick?
This is going to seem like retaliation, but Zach, if you can confirm, I have not typed anything on my computer.
Nothing.
Here
It's
we
all
go.
good.
Here we go.
Oh, here
The
we go.
Divergent series is my choice for overrated.
Fine.
It's weird. He just put in notes just like that.
All of them are there. No, and I say this because Divergent is the biggest series, YA series, that no one has ever heard of. These books came out. Those that loved them, but they did not make a huge splash in the YA industry. Mm-hmm. Like, we're making a film adaptation of this movie, and everyone's like, what book is that? And then the movies came out, and like you already mentioned, they made a combined total of $765 million worldwide for 3 movies.
Yeah.
No one talks about them.
No.
These movies came, and everyone, like, I don't know why the studios put so much stock into this series, honestly. Like, I was like, wow, they really focused in on that. And then they didn't even finish it. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm actually really bothered by this whole series.
Sure. Yeah.
Because they're building to this end, and then, like I said before, if they'd have just done that final movie as one movie, the series would have been complete. But instead, they're like, no, we're not going to make a movie. We're going to do a TV series instead. And then Shailene Woodley's like, I'm not doing that. And they're like, okay, well, we're just not going to end it then.
Right.
Fine. And so the whole series kind of puttered out.
My biggest issue is you need to be able to have an elevator pitch to explain, especially in YA fiction, I think. Like, a lot of them are high concept, but I don't really know what Divergent is about.
Oh, Kent, let me explain it to you.
Okay, please
so the
do.
Elevator is closed. We start going up, and I say,
He's
hey.
getting a little sassy, Debbie.
In a world divided by factions based on virtues, Triss learns she's divergent and won't fit in. When she discovers a plot to destroy Divergence, Triss and the Mysterious Four must find out what makes Divergence dangerous before it's too late. Ding! I walk off. You got the
So
whole story.
relevant.
The whole story.
Sure.
So yes, I'm not. You already talked about the series at length, and so I'm not going to go too much more into it. And I already said Twilight. I already gave Twilight as an answer on episode 245, so I couldn't do it again. But I'm choosing Divergent series.
Kent, what did you choose?
I'm going to read a portion of my review after I saw this movie.
Oh.
It's going to sound real mean, by the way.
You're writing?
Kent.
What?
I'd liken this to the Return of the King of cancer movies. It just didn't want to end. As brutal as this makes me sound, I was ready for someone to die 90 minutes in.
Oh boy.
Is this Fault in Our Stars?
This is The Fault in Our Stars.
What?
Now, listen, in my review, I'm actually pretty positive. I think, once again, Shailene Woodley does an amazing job in this one.
Has she been in a successful... I mean, Divergent was successful.
She
but I mean,
was almost cast in Amazing Spider-Man 2.
I remember her in The Descendants. Not the Disney one.
Yeah.
This is Baby Driver, right?
No.
Ansel
Elgort.
Egerton.
Oh,
yeah.
That's not, I was going to say Shailene Woodley's not in
Yeah,
Baby
he's
Driver.
in that. The writing is good in this book as well. I guess movie. The movie. I don't know how close it is to the book.
It's pretty close.
It is very emotional, very overly emotional. It's fine. I just think it's overrated because a lot of people see this as like a really deep, serious be-all,
I
end-all.
think it's A Walk to Remember or the Notebook of its time.
And so Hazel and Gus are teenagers who meet at a cancer support group and fall in love. They both share the same acerbic wit and love of books. Especially, okay, we don't need to go into that. Anyways,
And everyone
Gus
dies
is
at the
like,
end.
they're like, "Are you afraid of death?" "I'm afraid of oblivion." I was like, "Shut up, Gus."
Well, who was afraid of the Tom Cruise movie? It's actually really enjoyable.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a mishmash of things, but
Yeah.
it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But he was releasing, the book was released in 2012. The movie 2 years later. That's what's so interesting about young adult. They were kind of like, "Hey, you're writing a book?" "Yeah, my cousin is." "Oh, well, we're going to develop it."
This was written by YouTube and TikTok star John Green. So
Hold on.
had
Zack's saying,
TikTok
Zack's
star
asking you to
Yes.
from 2012.
Well, I mean, he is obviously now.
You mean Vine?
Him and his brother Hank Green, they are TikTok royalty at this point. But even so, flash forward to now,
Yeah.
he writes a book, and the movie rights are sold before he's done with the book.
But
before
they
it's
haven't
published.
done one since Paper Towns
They're doing-
because the
they're-
genre just kind of died.
I think they're
kind of
doing
like some
another one.
characters in this.
Something about turtles.
Everyone dies at the
I don't
end.
know.
Am I less in trouble for my choice?
Probably.
I feel like I am.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I'm not super mad at it. All right, now how about the movie you liked better than the book, Joel?
You know how when you're forced to read a book in school,
Yep.
Yeah.
and it drops it down a couple of percentage points. Like it doesn't make it as enjoyable because you have to read a certain number of chapters. You're not reading at your own pace. You have to write an essay about why he said "Stay golden, pony boy." Stay golden, pony boy. Because I'm choosing The Outsiders.
Is the movie good?
I still like it.
No, I just watched it for the first
not
time
very
last year.
good.
It's
But
not
no,
good.
here's the thing about the movie.
The cast
that
is great.
It's an amazing cast in like the early roles.
Yeah.
It's dramatic. I should pull this back.
Yeah, please
so
do.
The Outsiders, the author is S.E. Hinton. It came out in 1967, and the synopsis is: in a small Oklahoma town in 1964, the rivalry between two gangs, the Poor Greasers and the Rich Sox, heats up when one gang member accidentally kills a member of the other. So it's very much kind of West Side Story, Romeo and Juliet type thing. The movie was directed by Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah.
Which is weird. And I found out he did it because an elementary school teacher in California, her and her students wrote him a letter and said, "We are also impressed with the book, that a petition has been circulated to ask that it be made into a movie, and we have chosen you to send it to." And so they had like 15 pages of children's signatures, and they sent it to him, and he's like, "What's this?" And so he read the
Yeah.
book. He liked the book, and he went, okay, I'll make the movie.
Look, do I think it's a good movie? Not really. Did I enjoy it? Yeah.
Yeah. This is it.
Daniel San in that movie? My
Yeah.
goodness, he's so good.
He is, when he's like laying down there with his burned up back, and it's
You just feel
very
for
depressing.
him, man. Oh my
Avenge
gosh.
me.
But then, reading, like, I should go back and read the book for pleasure, because when I read it for an assignment, it's not as fun. But I want to go back and read the book again now that I'm older, now that I can appreciate it. And who knows, maybe it'll flip flop. But right now, I definitely like the movie more than I like the book.
What about you, Kent?
A rebellion against the oppressive capital has begun, and Katniss and fellow tribute Peeta Mellark are forced to return to the arena in the special edition of the Hunger Games. This is Catching Fire.
The second book.
The
in
second
Hunger
one.
Games
So,
series.
so I feel like the book series of Hunger Games starts strong, diminishing returns from there. Mockingjay is not real good at all.
Part 1 or part 2?
Oh man, I do not like those movies, but somehow, and I will maybe say it's director, or maybe people just felt comfortable in their own skin. When the Hunger Games came out, you're like, how are they going to do a PG-13 version of this? And it's just Bourne Identity camera. It's just like, what's going on?
Shaky, shaky, shaky.
Is there violence? I'm not really sure, but the actors were good. And then they replaced the director from F. Gary Gray to Francis Lawrence, who's done every movie since, and even the prequel one.
Every movie, not even Hunger Game movies.
Yeah,
He's just done
Every movie ever made.
I
I
think
really loved his Oppenheimer. Yeah. So good.
You know,
bit cleaner.
you know the movie Oppenheimer now. That's good.
so. I think they captured some sort of charm or success in the second one, where it felt more heavy, it felt more important, and I think their acting was that much better.
Why is Lenny Kravitz so good in this movie? Come on.
The book series was written by Suzanne Collins in 2009. Feels like a fake name. And then the movie was released in 2013. It made $865 million on a $130 million budget. And I will say this, like maybe they added additional character actors like Jenna Malone and Sam Claflin as Joanna and Finnick were perfect.
They did a really good job.
They were perfect. And this movie
You
is
didn't like
fun
Mags?
and it's
I like
dangerous.
Mags.
Oh yeah, Mags is great. Exactly. I just think all the additions to this one felt like a bigger, more fun movie, even though it ends on a cliffhanger, which is kind of like The Empire Strikes Back of the thing, but still super great.
Isn't it hard not to say Peeta Mellark?
Peeta Mellark.
Not Peeta Mellark.
I can't picture Josh Hutcherson. Well, there's the whistle meme or whatever, but without his face in the
With the tree.
cake tree.
Yeah.
I painted this real fast.
He's so talented.
What about you, Debbie?
By the way, Debbie, Team Geller, Team Peeta.
Oh.
Team PETA.
Yeah. Whoa. Okay.
Peeta
Gel for
Mellark.
sure.
Wait, you just expected her to agree with you?
Yeah.
You were like, yeah, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Peeta.
Well,
Anyways.
it's because of what Gail does at the end.
Sure, but he's handsome.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I didn't see two of the movies or read any of the books. What do you got, Debbie?
I actually read these books first, but enjoyed the franchise better, and that is Shadow and Bone. So
Oh.
Shadow and Bone is a young adult fantasy adventure. It's a trilogy. It's written by Lee Bardugo. It was published in 2012, and it follows Alina Starkov, a teenage orphan who grows up in the Russian-inspired land of Radka. When one day she sees she has this power she doesn't realize she had, and then becomes a target of violence as also worship. So it's the first book, like I said, in a trilogy. This author also did a duology called Six of Crows, which was published in 2015. And this follows a thieving crew and is set in the city of Ketterdam, which is loosely inspired by Amsterdam, early Amsterdam. The plot is told in the third-person viewpoints of 8 different characters. So, and then she does a couple more books after that.
And Shadow and Bone was a TV series, correct?
It was, because
TV series.
we talked about this in episode 405,
Netflix.
canceled too soon in Netflix. And so the TV series actually meshes the 2 books, the two series. So Six of Crows starts 2 years after Shadow and Bone finishes. But what they did in Netflix, the Netflix production, is they mesh the 2 so that they're simultaneous. And I actually prefer that. They actually are right together, though. It's not like they're flashing back and forward. So they've mixed the characters so that they interact.
Oh, so it's all happening at the same time?
Right. But they kind of borrow stories from both to make the thing. So in that sense, I like it better because I think it spurs people to read the books and then they can get more involved. But it's also a good introduction to this, what they call the Grishaverse. Because it's...
And is that vampires or is that black magic?
More fantastical, right?
It's more fantastical. So there's some individuals that have special powers. They can harness the weather, or they can repel metal, or they...
So it's X-Men.
Kind of, in an old-fashioned Russian, I guess, era type of thing. So it's a whole universe. Like I said, it's called the Grishaverse, and that I just really like the idea that you get to see it on the screen. The series did change the ending, so it would have been interesting to see if they'd come back around in season 3 or how they were going to do that.
So they did give it a kind of ending?
Kind of.
Okay.
But they left enough out because they anticipated that 3rd season and then Netflix canceled.
They resolved the Bone storyline, but not the Shadow storyline.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then Netflix said they'd consider doing a Six of Crows offshoot, which my children were really excited about because they like those books better. But they recently came back and said, no, we're not doing either one. So.
Cool Netflix.
Netflix showing Restraint. What?
Weird.
All right. Our next category is the movie that made you want to read the book. Kent?
Stardust.
Oh, that's a fun one.
Yeah, I haven't read the book. And it's weird. The book, so it's written by Neil Gaiman. Sakar.
Yeah.
Gaiman. Did he do the series on
He did. Good
Amazon?
Omens.
There we go.
Yes.
Yeah, Gaiman.
So if you haven't seen the movie, the story is set in the ancient world where magic and humanity coexist in unusual ways and follows a young man who must use his wits to survive in a secret place where fallen stars can take many forms. So this is not a traditional book. This is a DC Comics illustrated novella. It's not exactly a graphic novel, though it is highly illustrated. But this is a book that has so many pictures, and it came in like a series. I remember seeing the trailers for Stardust back in the day. And you know what? 2007 was this right in the middle point of young adult fiction adaptations, where I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be one of those like Lord of the Rings knockoffs that gets one movie and no one really cares. And the trailers didn't look funny. They didn't look good. But then the movie was kind of awesome.
I thought Michelle Pfeiffer did great in it.
Yeah. Even Robert De Niro, pretty good.
Yeah,
was
as
in
the
this.
pirate guy. Yeah.
Right, and also you have Charlie Cox and Claire Danes. I still haven't read it, but it makes me want to, like, even just own it and be like, oh yeah, Stardust is a pretty cool story.
Yeah. It's a fun family film.
Yeah,
So,
somehow.
aging myself, Stardust
Yes.
was a movie that for some reason my senior year was like hey, have you seen this movie?
Oh, really?
It was the movie night movie.
Okay.
And it was an end of year movie when people were like, you just have to be at school because the law, and multiple teachers would play Stardust that year. It was very strange.
Okay.
Good movie.
It's a good author, too. He also wrote or did Coraline.
Coraline.
And the Ocean at the End of the Lane. I think that's the name of that book.
I'm ready.
So
It's
it's really interesting author, kind of quirky.
And what's your choice, Debbie?
My choice is The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind. This movie is a 2019 film written and starred by, I'm not going to say it right, Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Oh yeah.
Pretty dang close.
Yeah.
And it's about a boy, William, who comes from a family of farmers in this little village, and he gets kicked out of school because his parents can't pay for it. So he has this talent for fixing radios, and because he was kicked out of school, he sneaks in and he reads books, and he figures out engineering and energy. And so what happens is he ultimately decides that he can build a windmill so that he can get them water and electricity.
Okay.
And the movie was amazing. I saw a little parts of it again
I still
today.
haven't seen it.
Oh, makes me cry
Okay.
every time. So he does save his village from a drought, but it's based on a true story. And so as soon as I knew that and kind of looked it up, I bought the book, and the book's very true to the movie.
Except for Joel, what happens at the end?
Everyone dies at the end.
Yeah.
And so that was one that I was so intrigued by this story. And at the end of this movie, they show the real families.
I love that.
I do too.
Yeah.
And he talks about, he goes on and he gets degrees and he helps his people. And I love those kinds of movies. And so the book, it really inspired me to read the book and learn a little bit more. The book goes into a little bit more detail. It moves a little more slowly. So you get even more invested in these individuals, especially knowing that they live.
Well, except for everyone dies. Yeah.
Spoilers.
Valen
Sure.
Morghulis.
Joel?
Back when we did episode 245, we actually had a category similar to this one, and I chose Ready Player One, which I was like, okay, I can't choose that one again. But I'm going to build a bridge here over to Debbie. Little bridge here, because I'm going to steal one of her answers from 405, because I've thought about this book/show a lot. But sadly, it's not available because it's Mysterious Benedict Society.
Oh.
So Mysterious Benedict Society, it's a series of books. The original one came out in 2008, and it tells the story of 4 gifted children who together form the Mysterious Benedict Society and are sent to investigate an institution called LIVE, the Learning Institute for the Very Enlightened, run by a man named Ladrop the Curtain. How's that? Yeah, I got it. It's kind of a wordplay.
Okay, sure.
But the series came out in 2021 and 2022. It was 2 seasons, 16 episodes. And it was fantastic. I really just loved each one of the characters. And my children had read the book. A couple of my children had read the book beforehand, which is why they wanted to watch the show. Now that we finished the show, and after we talked about it, Debbie, last year, and it wasn't available to watch anymore. I'm like, the only way I'm going to be able to know kind of how the story goes is by reading the other books.
There be other ways.
But that's the way the story's going to live on, because Disney has literally pulled the plug on the show and removed it from the streaming service.
Which is the only reason why you should be doing some stuff on the high seas on the internet.
But I just thought it was well cast. I thought it was well acted. It was quirky and fun. It was kind of like a brighter version of a series of misfortunate events, where it was like that kind of quirky, meta-ish kind of stuff, but not really. But the characters are great. In fact, I constantly reference Constance Contraire in my house. My daughter kind of looks like her, and when she does her hair in little braids like Constance, I'll talk to her as if she were Constance, and she plays along, my little 6-year-old. And it's so much fun. So yeah, if you haven't had a chance to see Mysterious Benedict Society, I'm sorry it's not available for streaming, unless you are. But if you want to know the series, read the books, because they are utterly enjoyable, and everyone dies at the end.
Debbie, what's the least true to the book?
Okay, I'm going to give a couple of honorable mentions and then talk about the one I feel. Least honorable mentions least true to the book include The Host, the Percy Jackson movies, and I would be remiss, and my daughter would not be happy if I didn't mention the second Maze Runner movie. So,
Yeah.
So, but the least true to the book that I picked.
We're all mad.
The Maze Runner series was actually really enjoyable,
it's good,
and the
yeah.
movies were like, not.
Yeah. But the one I picked was The 100. Now, The 100 is a series of young adult science fiction novels by Cass Morgan.
There's 100 of them.
No, there's only 3.
Spoilers.
Liars.
But the first one was published September 2013. The series is set 300 years after a nuclear apocalypse, and the only known survivors live in a space colony in satellites above Earth.
My wife watched this.
Yes. The resources are so scarce that all citizens, no matter how small, if you have an infraction, they punish them by death. They float them into space. Unless they're under 18, and then they put them in jail.
Among Us, yeah.
So the book begins with the main protagonist, Clark Griffin, being arrested, and then they decide, we're going to send 100 of these kids down to Earth to see if it's inhabitable. If it's not, we've saved some resources. If it is, then we can also come down. So that's the premise of the book and the trilogy.
Kids are guinea pigs.
Exactly. The series Prior to the publication even of the first book, producer Jason Rothenberg became interested in adapting the story. So it premiered in 2014 on the CW, starring Eliza Taylor and Bob Morley as Clark and Bellamy, the two main protagonists.
So like everybody just had killer abs.
It was
for sure.
They were all beautiful.
Bob Marley?
Yeah.
Bob Morley. Did I say Marley?
No, you
I'm
didn't.
so
No,
sorry.
No, that's just me.
Joel's just telling jokes.
just me.
Again.
Okay.
That's my
So-
job.
It's considered the most watched show in its time slot on the CW. It ran for 7 seasons and ended in September 2020. So it starts deviating at the very first season by killing one of the main characters. They added several other main characters, and then it went off the rails by the end of season 2. It goes very dark. It goes very violent. It should be considered inspired by instead of based on, because it was that bad.
Joel, what's your least true to the book?
The books are set in a fictional fantasy Viking world and focus on the experiences of protagonist Hiccup Horrendous Haddock III as he overcomes obstacles on his journey of becoming a hero the hard way.
Yep.
So I am choosing How to Train Your Dragon, the first of which the books came out in 2003, and the first movie came out in 2010. Now, the books are actually children's books, and there's a whole series of them, but they're not like the movies at all.
Right.
Like the dragons in the movie aren't at all like the dragons in the book. In the movie, they're large dragons that they can ride. In the book, they're smaller and they have the ability to speak. They're not really fighting dragons either. Like they can, all the dragons can speak in the book, but only Hiccup can understand Dragonese. So he speaks Dragonese with the dragons. And the Vikings, and the Vikings have been in the books have been training dragons for ages. But they yell at them to get their point across. That's how they train, is by yelling. And so Hiccup learns that he can not yell because he doesn't like to, and he's going to speak Dragonese to get through to these dragons. Astrid, not in the book at all. There's no love interest for Hiccup.
Yeah.
And Toothless is not a Night Fury. He's a common or garden dragon. He's just a little small, annoying, complaining a lot dragon. So
I don't care for that.
That's
The author approves it, though, the changes that they made.
and that's, I think they changed. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying they changed it for the better. But I was surprised to learn how different the movies are from the books. Completely different. But that's not to say they're bad. And some people prefer the children's novel. They're mad that the movie changed so many things. People who watch the movie first obviously like the movie better than the books. So if you're a big fan of the movies, I wouldn't recommend reading How to Train Your Dragon unless you want to see a different multiverse of what could have been.
Right.
Or I guess the original multiverse. So yeah, How to Train Your Dragon, at least true to the book.
What about you, Kent?
I'm going to start with some honorable mentions. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, The Goblet of Fire, The Order of Phoenix. Let's see, The Deathly Hallows. But my choice is Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince.
Okay, a couple of those are okay.
No, here's
the third
thing.
one is pretty close to
Here's
the
the
book.
thing. There's no way you can fit an entire book into a movie.
Which is why I'm actually okay with the HBO series coming up.
You have to pick and choose.
Yeah, but they pick and choose some pretty weird stuff. For example, and that's why I'm saying Half-Blood Prince. I really enjoy that book. I think there's so much it is very flashback heavy. It's Harry and Dumbledore for the most part going back through the pensive.
Yeah.
The
Sakaar.
Yeah, Sakaar. Thank you very much. And seeing Tom Riddle and seeing the origin of Voldemort. And the movie is kind of like an angsty teen rom-com.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't really move this story forward like
I
it
don't
needs
like
to.
this adaptation, to be honest.
Yeah, is this one of your least favorite Harry Potter
Half-Blood Prince
movies?
probably is my
This
least
is
favorite.
probably my least favorite book too.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I think
five and six.
it's super dark, but I think it does so much to set up the finale of the story.
I think it's why I don't like the book or story, because it is just set up.
But then, for example, in the book, there's a battle of the astronomy tower. There's a funeral because everyone dies,
Everyone dies in the
obviously.
end,
And obviously, like I said, the flashbacks in the book has no funeral, no battle. There's a reference to it. And I think they're leaving out a lot of the emotions. Instead, we have Ron acting like a goof. Everyone has long hair, and it is the worst hair phase of the Harry Potter
Goblet
world.
of Fire just called.
Okay, hold on. We need to Google these images.
No, I
because
promise you, the worst hair era.
it's a Goblet of Fire.
Goblet of Fire. Yeah.
And honestly, Goblet of Fire has been one of my least favorite Harry Potter movies in a while because of how much it leaves out of the villain. Right? It kind of just hurrying gets there. But they still keep the story pretty intact. It's just Half-Blood Prince. It's a mystery novel as well, and that's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. With the fifth book in that series, I was 850 pages. You had to accept that this is going to be different.
Yeah.
And they still keep, I think, a lot of the main ideas intact and yada yada over what they had to.
Sure.
But I do think Half-Blood Prince, it's this is a different thing.
Right.
You know, this is definitely based on the book.
Yeah, and it's a short movie. Like people will watch a long movie if it's Harry Potter, or they would have anyways.
Or a two-parter.
Then it kind of gets ruined.
What feels too dark to be in the young adult genre, Joel?
I'm going to go with the obvious answer here, and I'm obviously going to say How to Train Your Dragon again.
Sure.
No, I did choose The Hunger Games. The first book is still pretty dark, but as it goes along, I'm like, this isn't for young adults. This is like adult fiction.
I feel like it set the standard, though, after that. I feel like violence and Battle for Survival kind of became part of the genre.
Well, and I think, Kent, you hit the nail on the
And
head.
Debbie, tell me if I'm wrong. I'm just kind of...
No, you're right.
Talking that
That's
turn.
the one I picked too. So
Okay.
I'll mention it a little bit later.
Okay.
Well, and I was going to say, Ken, I think you hit the nail on the head earlier, because the book is very dark. And then they did the movies, and they're like, how can we make this PG-13 for young adults? And so they decide to just kind of do shaky cam and not show the violence, which sometimes actually is pretty effective. When your brain kind of fills in what happens, you're like, oh, goodness. But you can tell even the movie, they had to pull so many punches. So like, this is an R-rated violence kind of a situation. We got to pull that back. I do enjoy the first two books.
Yeah.
And the first two movies.
Right.
It kind of falls apart in the end. And I think that they did just kind of, I don't know, just ran out of ideas or just, I don't know. I'm not an author. I've never written a full book, but it just felt like she didn't know where to go.
And it may have been a case of expectations, because we all want to see the revolution, right? We all want to see justice be served.
And
for some reason, it wasn't good.
Well, and there was a point where I was like, okay, this could end well. And then it just completely... my sister once said, and I've thought about it ever since, she says, when people can't come up with a good ending, sometimes they'll come up with a sad ending, which is weird because everyone lives at the end of this one. It's really bizarre. No one dies.
Of course, Joel's mad.
Yeah, Joel, everyone lives.
Everyone lives.
Everyone.
But yeah, and also props to Hunger Games alongside with 2012's Brave for crediting. They've been credited with increasing female interest in archery.
Oh, hey.
Debbie,
Nice.
what would you like to say about the Hunger Games?
I was going to say, when it first came up, the idea really bothered me. If you think of the premise of...
We didn't even say yes, for those who
the
don't
premise
know.
of taking
Battle Royale.
children.
It's kids killing kids.
Yeah. And and that it's mandatory watching also in the capital, that you have to watch this, and in the districts you have to watch it.
Yeah, it's like a Running Man meets the lottery meets... There's a couple stuff it's building on as well.
Right.
It's the 2000 action thriller Battle Royale.
Yes.
And eventually my sister-in-law said, well, the movies aren't as bad as the books. So I thought, well, I'm going to read
As
the
bad
books.
as in as dark.
Right, as
Yeah,
dark.
sure.
So I read the books and then saw the movies and thought, okay, I see it. But I also had younger children at the time, and I wanted to start seeing what they would see. And so I did that. But that's the one that I also picked. Like I said, it feels too dark. And interestingly enough, I went on, not the source of all truth and knowledge, but the source,
Wikipedia.
not that one,
Oh,
but
okay.
Reddit, to see what others had to say.
No one's ever said that. Nobody has ever said that. Don't go
The
there.
source of all rumors and lies.
Right, exactly. But it was
Trademark.
interesting that a lot of individuals said as teens, they just read the story and they didn't get a lot of the deeper or
Okay.
darker themes, which we won't talk about here. But there's a lot of really dark themes related to the Hunger Games and what happens to the tributes after, like Finnick and things like that they didn't catch, but as they're reading them again in their 20s, they're catching, which I thought was interesting. And maybe that's why the movies are so successful, is because it goes over younger teens' heads, those themes.
Yeah, and there's
Like-
a couple layers there.
Like innuendo in 80s comedies.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
Kent, what is your choice?
The Hunger Games is a great choice, but it's not the Golden Compass. Part of his Dark Materials series. This is a series that is composed of 3 books. That's The Golden Compass, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass. The first book, it follows a young girl who has a demon/familiar. She goes on an adventure after she discovers that the Magisterium is doing experiments on children and their demons. Now,
The Magisterium of Dr. Parnassus.
yeah, thank you very much. There's 4 different actors, right? It's a little weird. So the books are written by Philip Pullman, and there was a movie that came out in 2007, and this was right, I think in the height where, hey, let's make Aragon, hey, let's make every other sort of Lord of the Rings ripoff. But yeah, obviously based on books. But it's only got one movie, which starred Nicole Kidman, Daniel Craig, and Dakota Blue Richards. This is the one with the cover with the polar bear wearing armor.
Yes.
You remember
Which
that,
everyone
right?
remembers that, yes.
Okay. And
And it
so,
looked like Narnia. Like all the previews, I was
Yes.
like, this is like a Narnia ripoff.
It did make $372 million on a $180 million budget, so made its money back a little, couldn't justify a sequel. And then a couple of years ago, 2019, HBO made a series starring James McAvoy and Ruth Wilson, and it ran for 3 seasons, but then they didn't finish it. They just canceled it before it finished, which is okay, because this is not really a YA idea. Okay, there's 2 sides here. People see the magisterium as the Catholic Church. This is a book about the separation of church and state. And the church, well, it experiments and kills these demons that if you do that, you take the soul out of children as well.
Book.
In the book.
Yeah.
And in the show. They didn't quite get there in the first movie.
Not in reality.
Yeah, not in reality.
I don't want us to get sued.
Thank you very much. But like people in the Catholic Church, they're very upset because basically they're saying the authors, and I don't want to get too far into it, but he's against religion. And he's saying, no, I just want you to challenge your dogma. But at the end of the series, it is about killing God. And so everyone's like, oh, I don't know if I want my kids reading that. So it's a very controversial series that I'm like, wow, yeah, the author's really swinging for the fences there. Like he's really trying to challenge people. But it's never been adapted well. I think it's never quite got there because I don't know if the author knew or if these networks know who their audience is. Because I do think it's a little bit too dark for teens and maybe more catered towards adults. So,
but tell me this: how many people die in the end?
Everyone.
Okay, I'm in,
and all the animals too.
I'm out.
Aw.
That. Kent, what is your favorite character in a YA adaptation?
This is a hard one.
Harry, it's you that has to go on. I know it. Not me. Not Hermione. You. Ronald Bilious Weasley.
Stop.
Wow. Sorry, I know I already mentioned Harry Potter, but I had to pick out a specific character, and I was trying to think, like, that's too obvious, a Harry Potter character, but I'm like, what character do I really love? It's Ron Weasley.
And you're free to
Ron
check the king.
Weasley.
So he was born in 1980. He's an English pureblood wizard, the 6th and youngest son in the Weasley family, and Harry's first friend. Ron is just, I think, the emotional core, the one that adds levity to the entire series. How could you not love him? He's I think the lovable loser. He does gain a lot of success. I think the movies dumb him down quite a bit.
I'm going through the books and I'm like, wow, Ron's better.
Yeah, right?
But I mean, I like him despite in the movies, but he is better. He was my favorite character in the books.
Yeah, but like I just love him. Like he is clumsy with spells. Like he's a relevant character, but he's like protective of his friends. He has the best sense of humor in the books and the movies. And I think he faces fears. Like, for example, in the second book and movie, he's totally afraid of spiders.
Spiders?
But, yeah, right? Faces Aragog. Not Aragorn, but Aragog.
Not Aragorn. Not Aragorn, but Aragog.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, that's a bit confusing, right?
A little bit.
But you can't beat Ron. And then the flash forward with Ron and Hermione standing there sending the kids off. Old
Dad
Ron
bod Ron?
Weasley.
Spoilers.
It's the Halloween costume that I would like to use one day and hope that people know who I am.
Can we be aged Harry Potter characters
Ron.
one year?
I call Ron.
Hermione.
You want Hermione?
Why would you call Hermione? You literally have dark hair and glasses.
Hermione.
Deal. Anyways.
Debbie, what do you have?
This was easy. My favorite character is Anne of Green Gables.
Oh,
Wow.
that was
Okay.
gonna be my pick.
Anne of Green Gables is a 1908 novel by Lucy Maud.
That is such an off the wall but perfect pick. Like
Yeah.
it's so good, but I'm shocked.
We're like magic and dragons. Oh, and with an E, everyone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's set in the late 19th century and it recounts this orphan girl that is mistakenly sent to live with Spencer brother and sister because neither of them ever marry. And it just kind of is her life and it recounts her struggles and how she grows. And I thought it was really interesting that this has been translated at least into 36 languages, has sold more than 50 million copies. The author wrote 7 sequels with 2 chronicles. So there's lots of material. There's lots of film, radio, stage, and TV adaptations that started in 1919, and the latest one ended in 2019. My 2 favorite adaptations are the 1985 movie. It's actually a 4-hour.
Was it just a movie, or I thought it was a series?
It was a 4-hour television miniseries, but
Whoa.
here in the U.S., it was made into 2 movies.
Okay.
So they kind of did it that way. But
Anna
that's
Green Gables and Anna Babley. I've
That
heard.
was-
So
yes.
I've heard.
You've seen it?
Yeah, of course I have a sister.
Megan Follows is Anne, and it was considered the definitive version. To date.
What's the guy she likes? What's his name?
Gilbert Blythe.
Oh, Gilbert.
Yes. So
Colin Firth played him, right?
No,
Yeah.
you wish.
it was an amazing adaptation, I thought, of the books. I have read all 7. I had at the time read all 7. And then, of course, Anne with an E. This was a Netflix Canadian joint episodic drama that developed It did give a little bit more loosely adaptation. It gave all the classic stories, but then it had extra material that they put in there, introduced, like I said, new storylines about finding her parents and the Indian children being taken, which was a controversial thing that happened in Canada at the time. And I was really sad when that was canceled as well, because that was really, I could never get my children to read this series ever. And same with Little House on the Prairie. None of my children, none of my girls wanted to read either ones, but all of my children were glued to Anne with an E, including my son. They just loved that series. So.
Okay, good choice.
I use with an E as a username sometimes. We saw this at the Baconsale retreat because Withane is what it breaks down to.
Yeah.
So
with an E.
Just because of Anne of Green Gables. I'm Zachary Withane. Joel, what do you have?
So for my pick, I had a really difficult time narrowing it down to one person, one character. And so I went with one that I felt what I envisioned in my head when I read the story was what I saw when I saw it on the screen. Like it was just that great transfer of what I thought.
Sure. Sigourney Weaver.
Yes. No, I actually picked Rubeus Hagrid.
Okay.
Yes, I went with a Harry Potter pick because I think the series is fantastic and I think the books are fantastic.
They are.
They're fine.
But Hagrid.
Just overrated.
And I can't tell you how many times I've just said out of the blue, hello, Harry, Hermione. Just get into Hagrid's voice. But he's a half-giant, half-human who is the gamekeeper and keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts. And portrayed by Robbie Coltrane in all the films.
So good.
Which, Robbie Coltrane, if you don't know, he's not a giant.
No. What?
If you've seen him in GoldenEye when he goes strangling a cat and then he almost shoots James Bond, he's just not a giant guy. But the way they pulled this off, and just with his personality and the special effects they used to make him look humongous. And he's just this gentle giant that I just love that he's this constant presence in Harry Potter's life. And not to give too much away, but he's the first one to cradle him at the beginning, and you see, and he's the last one to cradle him at the end. Because
everyone dies at the end.
Because everyone dies.
Except Hagrid.
And J.K. Rowling did say that she had created Hagrid on the very first day when she was coming up with ideas for the Harry Potter book. And she has also stated that Robbie Coltrane was who she wanted to cast from the start.
Okay.
By the way, fun fact, she stated in a later interview that he's a Gryffindor. That he was in the house Gryffindor.
He's a squib.
Yeah. Right.
No, he wasn't. He was expelled.
Yes, he couldn't use magic.
Okay.
He was fired from it. Because he was
fired from
framed
magic
for the
until the
death
third
of Moni
book.
Never
Hurdle.
graduated. That's all that matters. I'm a Slytherin.
Anywho, he was a fan of the Harry Potter books from the start, and I think he just nailed the performance of the 8-foot giant. He's a lovable oaf, but he's also, I love when he gets serious, when he's just like at the very beginning, like, don't you ever bash Dumbledore in front of me. I can't remember the exact line, but something along those lines.
And so Albus Dumbledore.
Yes, but yeah, I think Hagrid is a fantastic version of what I imagined him to be.
Now, Debbie, we're going to deserves an adaptation or like a better one. Like
it
try
hasn't
again.
got one, or let's give him another try.
So what do you think? Are we starting anew? Or are we starting over?
Well, I'm going to give several
Okay.
that need, as honorable mentions, that deserve adaptations. And then I'm going to talk about one that needs a better one.
Okay.
Deal.
Okay. So there's a duology called The Forgetting and the Knowing. It's by Sharon Cameron. It is a 2016 and 2017 YA sci-fi fantasy novel.
I forgot that one was about, but now I know.
Yes. It's what happens is the residents forget their memories every 12 years. This storm comes through, and unless they write it in their books, they won't remember who they are or who their family is or what they do.
Interesting.
Everything is very structured, very safe, but because of this chaos of the forgetting, sometimes they have a day of no remorse, kind of like that. What is that?
Like The
movie?
Purge?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Beforehand. So there's only one person who never forgets. And that's the main character. And her name is Nadia. And so she tries to figure out why, one, she doesn't forget, and two, what happens and why it happens.
Interesting.
And so it's
does everyone know that she doesn't forget, or she just play along?
She just plays along.
Ah.
And there's very strict rules, and she has to go outside the wall to try to find out her answers.
And that's where she finds M. Night Shyamalan.
Exactly. The companion novel was released, and it happens years later, where the forgetting ends. I'm not going to go into that, but it ends, and you realize that there's other beings on other planets. And so this other one, the knowing, is that she has a memory so terrible she just wants to forget. So that still happens in the city, but everyone has moved to a safer place. And so she wants to go back to the city to forget. Anyway, so that's one. Scythe, which is a YA novel.
It's pronounced psych. I know, you know, that I'm not telling the truth.
That's what he does.
It is what he does. It's set in the far future where death, disease, and unhappiness are eliminated. So they have the rule of the Scythedom, which is a group of humans whose sole purpose is to replicate mortal death to keep the population growth in check.
Ooh.
The story follows
I got into that real quick. Oh, death?
I'm in.
The story follows 2 teens who are tasked with killing one another after they're both chosen to be apprentices, a position neither of them wants, but only one can survive. So that one, and it's a trilogy. The trilogy is not as good as the first book, but the first book would be a great movie. Sorcery of Thorns, which is by Margaret Rogerson. It's a 2019 that all sorcerers are evil. This girl has grown up kind of an orphan in a library to help care for magical books that, if released, will wreak havoc and wreak their power. And so then she's implicated in a death.
Kenton.
Yeah, right.
Once again, death, everyone dies.
Yes.
And so she's implicated, and she has to go to a sorcerer who is evil to help figure out who actually did the mystery. Okay. Last one. Is The Cruel Prince. It's a trilogy by Holly Black. It was released in 2018 and 2019. And it's about a girl who's 17 and mortal, and her parents were killed, and she was stolen, so to speak, and lives in this fairy kingdom. And she's just trying to survive and wants to be a part of it. But then there are things that happen because she is mortal, and there's a wicked son of a king and that type of thing. So it's very, very popular, actually. My son's like, he hasn't read this, but he says, I've heard that. He says, it's everywhere. And a lot of his friends really love it. My daughters love it.
So what's the future of YA? Is it going to be movies or TV series?
I don't know.
Like these ones you pitched, would you rather see a TV series?
I think some of them would do better with a TV series.
Okay.
I think others, like The Scythe, would be a better standalone movie.
Okay.
But plus, my kids will not be happy unless I mention Michael Bay. They want to see a
And
series.
if they make a movie, Michael Bay, if it's not directed by Michael Bay, I'm going to be very disappointed.
I'm very confused. My 11-year-old also recommended that one.
Yeah.
Michael Bay's awesome. There's like 9 books, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read them, so
Yeah.
I couldn't really talk about them. I've read all the others. But my better adaptation is for I Am Number 4.
Oh, yep.
I went to a early screening of that. Walked out very disappointed.
Yeah.
Yes, I was going to say it is a young adult science fiction novel by Pittacus Lore, which is a pseudonym for James Frey and Joby Hughes. The first book was published in 2010. They centers on a conflict of 2 extraterrestrial species, the Lordics and the Mogadorians. And so these Loric children have escaped and come to Earth, and the bad guys, Mogadorians, are coming after them to kill them, and they have to be killed in order. So the books are all about the perspective of the one of 9. It starts with I Am Number 4 because number 3 just died, because, they all die.
Mm-hmm. Everyone dies.
So there's 7 books in the series. Each one is about one of those teens. And then the last one is about them united as one and what happens in the end. So the movie was released in 2011. It received negative reviews. It had a worldwide gross of just under 150 million with a budget of 50 million. But it still fell short of expectations. Once again, in that time frame where, unless it was an absolute blockbuster, it kind of fell off the thing. It has lots of content. I think it's really interesting perspective. I think it just got lost with everything else. There's still some controversy surrounding the principal author, but the perspective and having each child going through how they escaped and what they do and their special powers to help protect and save Earth since their world is done, I think would be a great adaptation series, probably TV series more like than movies, because obviously they couldn't sustain the movie.
I actually got some merch at the screening, and it was a beanie, and it had the little swirl on it, the symbol, and then it said I Am Number 4. I totally gave that to my 4th child.
You kept it?
It fits. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Joel, what do you have?
So back on episode 245, I already mentioned Fablehaven, Brandon Mole's series, which I think is fantastic. In fact, I think any of his book series could make great YA fantasy movies, like The Beyonders, like 5 Kingdoms, like Dragon Watch, and like my pick, Candy Shop Wars.
Okay.
Because I think Candy Shop Wars is a fantastic series. Like, there's been 3 books so far, but even just the first one I think could make a great movie. Here's the synopsis. This book came out in 2007. Brandon Mull is the author, who, by the way, was on Baconsale episode 85, Star Wars versus Lord of the
We
Rings.
need to have him back.
We should.
Yeah.
He said he'd be happy to come back.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Been a minute.
But here's a synopsis. The story follows a boy named Nate and his friends who become the recipients of magical candy from magicians seeking a powerful treasure, which sounds a little general, but essentially a candy shop sells magic candy where, like, you eat one and you can have, like, you're on the moon, like your gravity lessons, and, like, some that can change your appearance and ones that can give you, like, speed, and there's good magicians and evil magicians. And as I read it, I could see the movie, like, forming in my head, and I was like, man, this really should become a movie. And then they had the Arcade Catastrophe, the second one in 2012. And the third and final book, The Carnival Quest, came out in 2023, so just barely. I read them all. They're all fantastic. I highly recommend reading the book series. But, man, it deserves adaptation. Something from Brandon Mull. Come on, Hollywood.
Honestly.
Something from Brandon Mull. Get on that.
What about you, Kent?
So I don't really read YA books anymore, and I probably should. So I went to my daughters, and one said Michael Vey, and the other one said Lunar Chronicles, which is like the kind of Disney princesses in the future, the like cyborgs and stuff.
What?
Yeah, she likes them. It sounded okay. But the one she was like dead set on, which I couldn't really get a good description of, is called Caraval. And this is a trilogy of books.
It's pronounced Carnival.
Yeah, right.
It's down in Brazil.
And Zach, just for you, it's Caraval.
Oh, yeah, I found it.
Yeah, so it's written by Stephanie Garber. The first one was released in 2017. And this first book, it's about 2 sisters, Scarlett and Tella. They've always lived on an island and have dreamed of seeing a grand festival called Caraval, which happens once a year on the mainland. This is a fantastical story, by the way. And their abusive father is arranging for Scarlett, one of the sisters, to get married off. So they escape and go to Caraval. And the other sister gets kidnapped and becomes kind of the centerpiece of this big game / carnival, this big event. Not quite Hunger Games, but it's more just riddles and mysteries and all that kind of stuff. And whoever finds this sister, other players can go too, wins the game. So she has to find her sister first, and whoever wins gets a wish granted. And so that's kind of like the basic synopsis. I didn't really understand anything else she said because
So it's like
she's
Twisted Metal?
yeah, basically, but with a lot of love.
Okay.
Twisted Metal with a
lot
heart.
of love.
And the second books are called Legendary and Finale, and the author has also written, I mean, that's what's crazy about these young adult authors. They write a book, 6 months later, the next one. And these are like 500-page books.
Cranking them out.
And that's a trilogy, and there's a second trilogy that takes place in the same universe. And I was kind of trying to think, like, do people have room in their hearts for young adult adaptations these days? And honestly, if there are filmmakers out there that will, like, adapt them well and make them for the target audience, I think yes.
I think the avenue has been open because it's not limited to just theatrical release movies.
Right.
You could do a streaming series.
Right.
And hopefully they give it enough budget to give it what it needs to be. But I think it's time for a resurgence.
Yeah, totally. So that's my choice because, well, it's her choice because I don't really have a choice.
Let's sum up with the best adaptation of the book. Joel, what did
Now,
you pick?
back on episode 245, take a look at what's a book. I said the Harry Potter series was kind of my favorite adaptation of books.
Yeah.
So I can't choose it again. So I'm choosing Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Zeroing in on one book. Yeah. Now, Kent, you mentioned this earlier as one of the worst adaptations, but I feel like Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban did a great job of taking so many different elements of, you know, time travel and the secret, the villain, not villain, and the hidden character that's been there the whole time. All these different moving parts of the wheel.
In Kent's defense, this is the only movie that he likes of the group.
It's the great one.
Yes, but I know they had to leave out a bunch of stuff, and that's unfortunate because it's a fantastic book as well. I really enjoy this book, and when I was seeing it come to screen, I was like, okay, don't mess this one up because I really enjoyed that book. And I got done and I was like, great job.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And so I really enjoy Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Alfonso Cuarón, this is when he took over. And so he changed the look. He changed the feel. Yeah, because Chris Columbus did the first two. He changed the look, he changed the feel, but he made it his own. And he didn't stray too far where it didn't feel like the Harry Potter we'd already gotten to know.
Yeah.
But he also, I think he turned it into what it eventually became.
And I think when it comes to an adaptation, it's not just like what's in the story, but how the story feels. Because I think Chris Columbus is the perfect director for the first 2 movies because they're a little juvenile and they got to set up a world, and he does that so well.
Yeah.
Then you have Alfonso Cuarón, who's a great auteur. He's a filmmaker, and it became more adult. It's still young adult, right?
Yeah.
It's still family friendly of sorts, but it needs to feel like a little bit deeper and a little bit scarier.
Yeah.
And that's where he changed things for the better.
Speaking of deeper,
Just
if you
like the
want-
books.
If you want to hear us talk about this movie at length, listen to Baconsale episode 159, The Prisoner of Azkaban.
Oh, that's so
where
cute.
Kent and I got drilled
How'd you
on...
remember that? Did you just pull that out of thin air?
It's in my memory bank.
Savant.
Yeah.
Wow.
But we went on a deep dive on this, and Jacob was asking us like very specific questions about this movie, and it was a pretty fun episode to do.
What about you, Kent?
Now, when we had the category of best adaptation, I was thinking, the one that's closest to. And then I got a little confused. So I'm like, well, is it my favorite? Because does best mean favorite? And then I'm like, you know what? It is the best and also the best adaptation. It's The Perks of Being a Wallflower. This was released in 1999 and written by Steven Chbosky. Sagar, whatever. And the synopsis is set in the early 1990s. The novel follows Charlie, an introverted and observant teenager, through his freshman year of high school in a Pittsburgh suburb. The movie was released in 2012 and then directed and written by the author. And I think that's where it's so close to the story, because obviously very passionate. Obviously, this guy knew what was needed in the story. In fact, in the movie version, he took out some, not all, but some of the dark elements.
Okay.
I mean, the movie itself is very dark and far too mature. And here's the thing. I think it's Ezra Miller pre-annoying stage, but Ezra Miller is in it. This movie's led by Logan Lerman, Emma Watson, and Ezra Miller.
I'm going to say, you're just copying me with this Emma Watson pick.
I know, truly. This wasn't a huge success. It made $33 million on a $13 million budget, but it is a real indie coming-of-age movie. I think it is just so well made, and it punches you right in the heart.
So you know the bit in the tunnel where she's in the car? Mm-hmm. I got to drive in that tunnel.
Oh, you did?
It's in Pittsburgh.
Did you do the same thing?
I tried. But I got hit the top because I couldn't get out of the car.
No.
Yeah.
Are you okay?
It's fine. That's why I've been weird ever since.
Sure.
I really loved that movie. I just haven't read the book, so I couldn't use it as...
Super emotional.
Well, what did you pick, Debbie? Our final choice of this episode.
I had a really, really difficult time. This was the last one that I actually wrote up because there's so many really good ones. My honorable mentions include Holes, because I think I chose it as the best adaptation from the book to the movie, not necessarily my favorite. But Holes, The Book Thief, was one I actually wrote up and really loved how they adapted that. The Chosen by Chaim Potok.
I never saw the adaptation of that.
The book is from 1967.
I read the book.
The movie was in 1981, and that's where I fell in love with adaptations on screen, was from that book. I liked The Fault in Our Stars as far as adaptation.
Yeah, no, it's good. I liked it too. It's just overrated.
And Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants was kind of fun too, as far as an adaptation.
Why'd you look at me like that, Kent?
Joel doesn't like it.
No, that's Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood.
I was getting those so confused. The Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood of Traveling Pants?
Ugh, that would be terrible.
But the best adaptation of a book that I decided on was A Monster Calls.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
Okay.
A Monster Calls is a low fantasy novel by Patrick Ness. And I love that
Low fantasy?
that's what they called it.
I like
I mean, it
that.
makes sense.
Yeah.
There's high fantasy.
Yeah. It's like low fat, so
Yeah.
you're not going to get as much fantasy out of it.
Yeah.
We're a
It's-
low fantasy podcast.
It actually was an original idea by someone else. She was terminally ill with cancer when she came up with the idea, but she died before she could write it. After her death, the publisher arranged for Ness to write the story. So it's set in present-day England. It features a boy who struggles to cope with the consequences of his mother's illness. He's repeatedly visited in the middle of the night by a monster who tells stories. He's 13 years old. He walks through the window and sees this monster that's made out of a yew tree. And the monster tells him, he will tell him 3 true stories, and then the boy has to tell him a story, and it has to be true. So it goes through these, and it's beautifully illustrated. The stories are actually not necessarily, they're a type of animation. Some are watercolor, some are like drawn. So he tells them these stories, and in the meantime, you see this boy grappling and dealing and getting a little violent. He trashes his grandmother's front room. He hurts a bully. he gets tired of the bully, and so he hurts the bully. And so these stories come up. And so the movie's actually very close. There's the ending's the same in that sense, but then they do a little like epilogue where it shows that he's going to be okay, and that he and his grandma are going to be okay.
On one hand, that sounds really good. On the other hand, spoilers.
Hey, literally, what happens in the end?
Everyone dies.
Everyone dies.
I was going to say, Debbie, thank you for being here, first of all. But then we want to hear from you, listener. We want you to play along with us on this journey and let us know your answers to each one of these categories. Let us know on Facebook. Let us know on Instagram. Let us know on Twitter. We want to hear your answers because we're always looking for good film and book recommendations. So, yeah, we look forward to hearing from you.
Debbie, once again, thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Before you go, though, are there any shout-outs you'd like to give?
So just a shout out to my kids, Samuel, Abby, Olivia, and Grace. They all love to read. They all love to watch movies. And we've had a special evening where we're going to feed my husband, their dad, a whole bunch of books that he's going to have to read.
Okay.
Just gonna sit there while he reads them.
Yeah, sure.
Before we go, we want to thank some patrons in a couple of categories, including the I Am the Listener tier, which is Angela Plotz, Casey Cummings, Juice the Cooler King Swallow, Some Guy, Sir and Madam Hicks, Jennifer Kilkowski, Taylor Sanderson, Shannon West, Rocky and Steph, Alicia Bass, Adam and Rachel Crump, Ryan and Marley, Lady Terrier Finley, and Scott. All I need are some tasty waves, a cool buzz, and I'm fine. Sprague. Oh man, we recorded early and he didn't get it changed.
Oh, dang it.
Shoot, sorry, Scott. And then we have our baking council, which includes Debbie Foster,
Hey!
Blow Clendaniel, our favorite couple, the Madsons, the other Brit Johnny English, Star Wars expert Kyler, Her Royal Highness Jessica Terry, Stephen everyone's favorite Ross, the one, the only Chris Anderson, Nicole D. Kale, and Beaker.
Thank you, patrons. You are the Anne to our Green Gables.
That's awesome, actually.
But if you want to find me, you can find me at 76Joel on Twitter. You can find me performing with Quickwits, who perform at the Midvale Performing Arts Center and the studio at the Parker Theater. For more details, go to qwcomedy.com or go to the Quickwits Facebook page.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Kenny3DD. You can read my movie reviews at ShowtimeShowdown.com.
If you'd like to connect with me, you can do so on Twitter and Instagram at Tumbling Mustard. But more importantly, make sure you're following Baconsale. Please like that Facebook page and then go to at Baconsale on Twitter and Instagram. And after you've done that, go to tpublic.com/baconsale for some merch. And then if you like what's going on here and you want to support us further, visit patreon.com/baconsale, where support starts at just $3 a month. You can get access to all sorts of things, including just how we feel about life in general via those sometimes weekly bacon bits. Patreon.com/baconsale. So until next time, if you liked this episode of Baconsale, you should really read the book. Everyone dies.
Debbie's the chosen one.
Apparently everybody's better than us. Like, what are we, 80s PG?
But no.
How'd you
Back
know
in
that?
2023, top of my head.
Savant.
And you don't want to give your child an irrational fear of bearded lizards.
Oh, this is so deep and insightful.
It's not hateful outside.
Go
Which
ahead.
one of the three members of Baconsale do you like the most, and why is it Kent?
Stop right there. Don't say but.
However,
I'm afraid of oblivion.
Who's afraid of the Tom Cruise movie? It's actually really enjoyable.
It's pretty good. Joel, what happens at the end?
Everyone dies at the end.
Yeah.
Bar, there be other ways.
That's just me.
Joel's just telling
That's
jokes.
just me.
Again.
Okay.
That's my
So-
job.
everyone dies.
I promise you the worst hair era.
four.
It's a goblet of fire.
Goblet of fire. Yeah. Everyone lives at the end of this one.
Reddit.
First of all, rumors and lies. Tell me this. How many people die in the end?
Everyone.
Oh, okay. I'm in.
And all the animals, too.
I'm out.
Not me. Not Hermione. You.
Not Aragorn. Not Aragorn, but Aragorn.
Yeah, thank Ron. I call Ron.
Hermione.
You are Hermione?
Why would you call Hermione? You literally have dark hair and glasses.
Hermione.
Hello, Harry. Hermione.
Oh, death?
I'm in. Okay.
Twist to metal with a
Ooh, I
heart.
love.
Debbie.